Other than hooking up the fuel outflow into the gascolator, into the firewall, which I can't do till I put the firewall on, and hooking up the fuel gauges, the last little bit I have to do with the fuel line is putting in this crossover line between the left side and the right side. I think this is probably a vent line to equalize the both tanks when you're running off of both for the 180 horsepower engine. Not 100% sure on that, and I'm not sure that it's needed or that it works, because you have a good ventilation in the fuel caps on these on both sides, but this is the way it runs. And one of the problems that I see with it is that it gets filled up with fuel rather than air. This fuselage is tail low when it's sitting on the ground, and even on the floats on the water it's tail low. So this hooks into the upper outlet or upper line on the fuel gauge, and runs over the upper fuel line on the fuel gauge on the left side. And so anyway, it's downhill, so when you fill the fuel tanks up completely full, they're up above the top of the fuel gauge, so I think fuel just runs down between the two of them. And I've had some kind of shaky looking readings on my fuel gauges at times. I didn't know what caused it. I was worrying that one of my vents on my fuel tanks might have locked up or something, but I think this is what causes it, is fuel gets down in these two lines here, or in this line here, in this vent line. But this is the way it runs from the fuel gauge there, upper line on the fuel gauge, down around the rear of this cabin post, and then across to the other side. Well, I've got this one put in on this side. Get a nice bend in there, put a little bit of 1/4 inch fuel line on there to help protect that around that bend. And it goes right over the top of this wing attach fitting, and that's the way the other one was. I looked real close at the pictures and stuff, the way it came apart, and that's where it goes. So anyway, that's routed there on this side. So now the other side, I've got it anchored to that post, or that crossbar, and I'll put a little bit of fuel line on that other side over there and bend that side, and then anchor it up to that wing root. Well, the vent line is all plumbed in. See how it works. It looks like I might have to cut it off a little bit and rebead the end of it there to go into the fitting on the fuel gauge. But otherwise, I got it all in both sides. Made a little bit of a change. I had this clamp down here and this line going up just above this lower bar here on this door, or this top of the wing root, and following it along, and I moved it farther away from the bend here where the wing attach is, so that it follows more the line of this curve of this wing root, of this upper wing, and that way it puts it up higher on this end, and that way hopefully well, it fares it up a little bit more out of the way of inside between the wing root and the fuselage, but hopefully it gets it up a little bit higher here so that fuel doesn't flow down that like it would have before. So, but that should do it for the vent line.